cutting people open, putting knives in their heads and all this kind of stuff. And it was just, my wife was appalled. She was looking at me. But I'll tell you what, when you write that stuff, it has to inhabit you. It's your daily life for 6 or 7 months. It leaves a mark in you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And we talk about this a lot because I'm one of these people that really is in the middle of the road on almost every issue because I understand where the balance is there. On the one hand, you have the isolationist side, which is, let's just put a label on it. Like, let's say very hardcore libertarian, stay away. That's not our problem. America first. Everything happens here, whatever. That's like the purest form take of it. On the other side, you have the military-industrial complex. It's like war. Never saw one we didn't like. Let's profit off of it. People dying, good for business, right? I don't like either of those things. I love the idea. I will say I love the idea of libertarianism and saying we don't have to worry about anything because it means more peace for us. I love that. But in practice, I know that doesn't work. But when people see us funding a war, to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars with people dying, corruption clearly happening, and also, this is the other point here, a big difference between Russia and 1930s Germany. Not to say Russia is not a threat and not a problem. They are. They have a GDP the size of Italy, though.
Yeah.
Germany had the biggest growing GDP in the world, right? They could take things over. They were moving wars on multiple fronts. It's not to say Russia couldn't develop to that, but the difference between those two for people of like, do we want to get involved or not want to get involved? I do think that there's a little bit of a level to it. That's not the same.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important to note too, before the start of World War II, America had the 17th biggest army in the world, right, even with Romania.
17th.
17th.
Wow.
We were not the military that we like to think we were at that time. So that's why, it's another reason that it took us a while to catch up. When we finally, like the aircraft that were used in taking middleweight were largely untested, and the Japanese Zero was a much better aircraft because they, again, just like with the Germans in Spain, they had tested the aircraft and their men. Well, they had the Japanese had all that time in China and Indochina to do the same thing. How does the Zero work? So you had all these veteran pilots. Those guys bombing Pearl Harbor, that was not their first big raid. Those guys were trained veteran pilots who knew what it was like to fight in wartime.
Yeah, that's huge. Now, you've written a lot of books on World War II and things related to that. I think you wrote one on like the Nazi war weapons. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
I wrote about, killing the SS was about, it was more about the kind of the Nazi hunters, like getting all the guys who did the bad stuff.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to have to check that out. I love that stuff.
Yes, it's interesting.
Okay. So...
It's creepy, by the way.
Why is it creepy?
Well, I mean, for instance, I was talking to my co-author on the phone, and I was reading a section back, and it was the notes of Mengele about some of the experiments he was doing on people. You're talking about, cutting people open, putting knives in their heads and all this kind of stuff. And it was just, my wife was appalled. She was looking at me. But I'll tell you what, when you write that stuff, it has to inhabit you. It's your daily life for 6 or 7 months. It leaves a mark in you because if you're writing about bad stuff all the time, it kind of seeps into your unconscious, and it takes a while for that to go once you're finished.
When you say it seeps into your unconscious, meaning like you're living with what the horrible things human beings are capable of, or you're getting desensitized to it, or both?
Both. And the fact that it becomes really normal, but then you find the things that people are willing to do that are just phenomenal. Like just the meanest things. And we all say it, and just real quick on this, you think about these concentration camp guards, especially, some of the women guards who were just really horrible people. Yeah. But you think about, and they were not 35 or 40 or 50. They were mostly in their early 20s or even teenagers. But if you've grown up your whole life in the only leader you've ever known in your whole life is Adolf Hitler, you're going to think that guy is a god. And you're going to do whatever that guy says. And that's why that's how it happened.
Right. I talk about this a lot with current events we have around the world. I never empathize with, let's say, like the terroristic act, right? I don't empathize with that. What I try to learn from is asking the question, how did this person get there? Right? So how does a 23-year-old get to the point where they blow up a building with 400 people in it because Allahu Akbar or whatever, right? Like, what environment did they come from? Because I feel like if we can empathize with the environment, and there's a way that we can then just improve it even 2% moving forward, you can save 2% of those types of situations and keep trying to improve that throughout time. So I do think it's fair to say, it's a good point you make. Like, you know, I think we have this fallacy today when we all look at this and say, for example, oh, I would have never done that or been a part of that.
Right.
Unfortunately, as sad as this is, psychologically, unfortunately, you don't know that. You know, I would like to think if you were 40 years old or something like that and had known a different world, you wouldn't have fallen into that trap. But like you said, if you're 23, 24 and you came up and it was HH, you know, that's what you know.
Yeah.
And you're going to follow that guy into the gates of hell, literally and figuratively.
Well, you think about all the Hitler Youth and the brown shirts that used to roam the streets even well before the war. So you it becomes a terror mentality. You're going to alter your behavior so you don't get hit.
That's right.
Just to minimize it, you know? So maybe by altering that behavior, you have to join them. And to join them, you have to adopt their code, which may be not your code, but after you do it long enough, you go, well, you know, I don't mind this one so much, and then I don't mind that one so much. Next thing you know, you're fully in.
Yeah.
And we all say it wouldn't happen to us, but if we came down to a completely, let's say the power grid completely shut down, we had nothing. I'm pretty sure at some point I would do whatever it took to make sure my family was taken care of.
Yes.
You know, and my ethics would go right out the window.
My buddy Matt Cox, who is reformed, he was a long time. What do you call it? Mortgage identity thief, mortgage fraudster, all that stuff. Did a lot of terrible things. Did a lot of time in prison for it too. But he talks about the threshold for crime that every human being has. And he said what he learned about himself is that he has a very low threshold for crime, meaning like the smallest thing could go wrong and he's going to turn to crime, which is not something he knew about himself before he started doing this. Whereas he's like, that has levels to it in the sense that a level could be, for example, you're a mother and your child's starving and you're next to a grocery store. You're going to steal a loaf of bread? Probably.
Yep.
Right? So when people get pushed to something and they get pushed to that cliff, it may take a lot of people way more steps to get to that cliff. But when they do, you're susceptible to it.
Yep. And we're just lucky right now that the way that we are as a nation, we don't normally have to make those choices, you know, but that day could come. You never know.
Yeah, I like this tangent though on that book you wrote. You wrote this one with O'Reilly, right?
Yeah.
About hunting the SS.
Yeah.
So was this all about, I guess, the 20, 30 years after that, where they're trying to track down the rat lines and things like that?
Yeah, and it kind of starts during the war, and then and it just goes into, you know, it's. And the Israelis, and the book is escaping, the guy is escaping. There was one of the big Nazi criminals. Again, I wrote this book 15 years ago.
Eichmann?
Was Eichmann?
Argentina, 1960?
Eichmann, yeah. When the Israelis went in to get him, they actually wore gloves because they didn't want their hands to be on the body of this reviled person. They didn't want any part of him, his DNA, touching their DNA, which I thought was really powerful. And here's the thing, to write that, again, you have to go into the minds of the guys who were doing the kidnapping. And then you also have to go into the mind of this guy who did all these terrible things. Now he's hiding in Argentina. He's trying to raise a family. And he worked in I think a Volkswagen factory or something like that. He was just a regular guy. So am I going to sympathize with him now because he's just a guy trying to raise a family, just like me? Or is like, yeah, but he did all these things to all these people and he has to pay. And so it makes for a little, moral back and forth.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.